Hello, welcome to Coffee Chat with Angie, episode number 1, where we talk about eco-friendly ideas fighting against the shitstem of the bully dozer. Hi, how you doing? Episode 1 of Coffee Chat with Angie. Okay, so today what I want to talk about is I'm done making the playlist. I'm done setting up my YouTube channel. I'll still add more ideas. The playlist is called My Craft Idea, Witchcraft Ideas, and different things here and there forever. The other playlists are done. I'm adding to the playlist isn't really my thing. Rather, I'll do different episodes like this, and then I can, instead of, if I want to say, hey, you can see my video on this, if you want to do a deep dive on that, Okay, so what we're doing here, like I said, eco-friendly ideas. We know that fools talk about people and geniuses talk about ideas, or whatever that saying is there. I'll put up a thing there, that. So we'll talk about eco-friendly ideas and fight against the shit stem. A stem grows, and the problems of today. We'll get to the root of the problem. The stem of the problem, the shit stem, and of the bully dozer. Like Bob says, total destruction, the only solution. Being sarcastic. Obviously we don't want to have to destroy anything, but is that our only choice? The way these people think and act and everything. So who are these people? I'm calling them the bully dozers, because they're the opposite of, like in Buddhism and transcending your ego, which is where the emphasis is with the Yan Sui, is to be awakened, to be awake, but through being aware of ego and transcending the ego through awareness, and the opposite of being aware would be to be asleep, or dozing, and really they are bullies. I believe that the narcissist epidemic, like the experts call it, I call it 666. Now I don't believe that scripture's the word of God, and I don't believe that when the people wrote the apocalypse in the Bible, the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelations, and just the whole apocalyptic genre, which is in various places throughout the Bible, it's very problematic, and there's no data to support the idea that they meant today or anything. It's just each new generation, through historicity and through their different needs of the time, have came up with their own apocalypse, and right now, supposedly, according to the religiosos, we're going to have another apocalypse, and it's going to be really, really bad this time, so we better listen to everything they say. I don't believe that God's a man in the sky, and that any book is I don't believe in the idea of scripture and that the God's a man in the sky. But I am a spiritualist, but I believe religion's out of date. So that's what I'm trying to fight against, the shit stem, the root of the problem, which is the bully dozer. It's the individual. We talk about it's Trump and that it's these leaders and everything, but the only reason those people have a bunch of money and power is because we've given them a bunch of money and power. The real problem is the individual. It's you and me, like Michael Jackson's song, about, look at the man in the mirror, It's who we see when you look in the mirror. That's the problem. We're all the problem. We all need to fix things, starting within, and then it'll ripple out, So the bully dozer, because they are bullies, and I've had a lot of problems with toxic people. So George Carlin is funny, because I saw a thing, he talks about how we soften up ideas, we realize something, we become aware, awake of something, woke, like they say. Woke doesn't really have a meaning. I don't use that word. It's just a word people use to say people they don't want, that they don't like, and to make them bad guys for no apparent reason other than that's what they want to believe. you know. All truth is a controlled illusion, you know. Everything's a perspective. It's just their version of the truth, you know. But that's it. That's what the whole point is. The individual, we need to adapt our and modernize our versions of the truth so that we're directing our energy in ways that can fix the problems that we're having, you know? And so the reason why we can't do that is because of the narcissist epidemic, you know? But I'm not going to call them narcissists. I'm going to soften it up, you know? And I'm going to call them toxic people, okay? So these are the 13 red flags of the toxic person, you know? The bulldozer, you know? They're the bully dozer, I mean. They're bullies and they're dozing. And why are they dozing? Well, here's the 13 red flags of the bully dozer. Number one, no compassion or empathy. They don't have compassion or empathy. They have a little bit of compassion. They're not completely. That's a common mistake. I love psychology and stuff, so I'm always learning, listening to podcasts and learning more and more about these things, you know. So I know that the experts, these matters about the toxic person, the experts argue about the line between a selfish person and a narcissist, a toxic person. You know, what is the difference between a selfish person and a toxic person? And that's the key difference, is that a toxic person doesn't have compassion or empathy, and they might have a little bit. It's been said that's one of the other arguments. Do they have zero compassion and empathy? They have a dash of compassion and empathy, you know. And since nothing's their fault, and I'll go into that later, they can use that to their advantage to convince themselves that they do have compassion and empathy. But really, that's the key difference between just a selfish person that's not a toxic person, even though being selfish is toxic, and a toxic person, like someone that actually could be diagnosed with narcissism. And we're not trying to diagnose anybody, and neither are the experts, you know. But it's the bigger deal, you know. Like Jane Goodall says, it's the apathy that's to blame for these problems. So no compassion or empathy. Of course, empathy is the opposite of apathy. And they really don't. They really don't. Like they say, no, let's drill. You know, like Trump says, drill. You know, but we need money. Let's exploit the land. Let's exploit whatever it takes to get the money and the things that we need. You know, that's no compassion or empathy for the earth. You know, we're all, you know, the opposite of a bulldozer is someone that's aware of ego, and they're eco-friendly, as opposed to ego-friendly. They're eco-friendly. And they're one, you know, an eco-friend, a human-centric person sees all humans as one. You know, they're like, oh, I'm sure a human-centric person, it's a pretty high level to reach in your ego development and your maturation process, to realize that, like, to look at, like, if your tendency is not to like homosexuals and you see a homosexual, you know, to say, hey, to realize to yourself, if I was living their life, I'd probably be a homosexual too. See, that's compassion and empathy, you know. But an egocentric person couldn't ever do that. And that's what we're talking about now. Why can't they do that, you know? You know, empathy, meaning to put yourself in someone else's shoes, you know. Number two, must keep the higher ground. They have no sense of equality, you know. Everything they do, you know, rooted in the no compassion and empathy problem, they always have to keep the higher ground. When they're saying or doing something, it's because they're trying to keep the upper ground. And if you've ever been a friend with a toxic person, they just you know, I think that this and that and this, and then suddenly it becomes their idea. Or they'll do anything, even if it's just stupid like that. Like you say your idea, and then they can see that just, whoa, your idea, their idea just put them on the higher ground. So then they'll steal the idea. They'll say it's their idea or whatever. There's many different things they do. They're good at what they do, but they're fighting for the higher ground. And it's in a relationship with a person like that, they can't have equality. If there's ever a moment where you're hand in hand and eye to eye and there's equality in the relationship, it's just a matter of time before they figure out how to destroy that equality. They can have no equality. Number 3, they can't listen. They cherry pick the information only as fuel to keep the higher ground and to manipulate. They take notes for fuel for their narcissistic supply. Like now cherry picking, everybody's so against cherry picking. You can't cherry pick the Bible. In the Yan Sui, we definitely believe in cherry picking the Bible. And again, if you don't know what I believe, if you want to know what I believe and who the Yan Sui are and why I believe I'm a Yan Sui and all that, that's what my playlists that I've already done before. Look through them and you can, I recommend just they're numbered. Start with number 1. The intro thesis is the beginning of that, and it goes over all these things. Who are the Yan Sui and why am I a Yan Sui? I believe in cherry picking because it's all a bunch of bullshit anyway, but I don't cherry pick. See the difference? A toxic person cherry picks information because they can't listen. They just take out what they need to manipulate and for their narcissistic supply and for their needs, right? And number 4 is everything they give is only given for their own benefit. Including their compliments. They don't like, it's kind of like they're just always a capitalist. They don't, if I'm going to share, it's like if you look at it kind of like the trick to being a rich person, it's kind of, like a rich person, like Jesus says, is not that I believe in the concept of heaven and hell, but it's harder for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than a rich man to make it to heaven. It's that thing, They just can't give anything unless they're making a deal. There's something in it for them. And so they can't make it to the higher concepts. They can't be eco-friendly, can they? Because they're blinded by all these things. Their lack of compassion, their lack of empathy, always keeping the higher ground. And then when they do give something, a word, their attention, their money, or their time, there has to be something in it for them. They're always trying to make money and build their enterprise and build their legacy, and there's always something in it for them. There's no freebies. Even if it looks like there is, there isn't. Number 5, they hate things you love that has nothing to do with them. Like if you say, I did this, I've done this before and tested toxic people. You say, see this pen? It's really simple and everything, and I've got nice things, but of all the things I own, this simple pen is the thing I love the most. It makes them mad. They might say, oh, that's really sweet, but inside they're thinking they now hate the pen. They're at war against the pen. How dare she love that pen more than me, And say, well, I'm going to go to work now. I'll just set this pen over here, and I'll see you after I'm back from work. But when you get back from work, this pen's going to be broken or stolen or misplaced. And you'll say, where's the pen? Where did my pen go? Where did my pen go? And they're just, you just refueled their narcissistic supply fuel tanks. Thank you for and then they'll lie, because they don't, morals and things like that aren't their thing, though they claim to be the epitome of all morality. They don't really have any. They're hypocrites, it wasn't me. Are you saying I did it? Number 7, they're always negative. Number 6, they're always negative. See number 7. Always negative. They're scary, they're just always negative, complaining, fault finding, just like, oh my hell, just non-critiquing, criticizing, gossiping. Just if you made a list of negative trains of thought, negative things that's their bread and butter, and that's all they do. They spend no time on any of the other stuff. Number 7, they love gossip and fault finding. They always sidestep the blame. They're talented at charm and love bombing. They can just lay it on thick, but then that they're gossiping and fault finding, and their love bombing is only going to last so long anyway. But even while it's lasting, that very same day, they're probably talking negative and gossiping about you. Remember what we said about number 3? They can't listen. When the times they were listening, they're going to use that against you, and they're gossiping and all these things. Number 8, easily angry and scary. They can't self-reflect. They're scary. They're just, you're like all like, I can't figure out how to put this top on this pen. Let me see that. Everything makes them want to snap into a Slim Jim. Makes me want to snap into a Slim Jim. Slamming things down, slamming their feet, hitting the wall. They're always angry, and you're always scared, and that's good, because you being scared of them for reasons like that puts them right up on the higher ground. It just caters to their needs. Number 9, they love to be appreciated, but they can't reciprocate. So you could say, I really love your music. You're really good at playing the guitar. You're really awesome, and that's good. That's good. They're like, okay, and they're loving it, But then you're like, oh, here, listen to my songs. And then, nope, let me see that guitar. Hey, everybody, but they'll always steal your spotlight. Nothing can be reciprocated. They want all the attention. They want you to praise them, but you're never nothing. The spotlight's never going to be your turn for the spotlight. There's never going to be your day in the sun. And there's no. They're here to teach and instruct you, not to praise you in any way. Number 10, nothing is their fault. Nothing is their fault. If they were to watch this, remember they cherry pick. If they were to watch this, that's the first one they would notice. You mean all I have to do to prove that I'm not a toxic person is to say something's my fault? They'll say something that's the love bombing thing. Anything good, they do it because the charm is their talent and love bombing is their tool. And they'll use that, if they're saying something's their fault, it's for one of those reasons. It's just a matter of time before they'll realize in their head nothing's ever their fault. They're always the expert. They've always got the higher ground, and they'll fight tooth and nail to keep it. Number 11, everything's your fault. So on top of that, everything's your fault, and they'll use gaslighting to believe it. You'll say, nah, I'm transgender. I'm not trying to be a woman. I'm just trying to be myself because gender's a spectrum. They're like, no. There's only 2 genders. They're the only reality is their reality. The only morality is their morality. The only version of the truth is their version of the truth. The only religion is their religion. Even though they're hypocritical and they don't even really understand their own religion, likely, it's what they use as a tool to keep the higher ground, and it's the only way. And everything's your fault, and they'll use gaslighting. Gaslighting means that they'll convince you that you're crazy. Nope. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. Why would a trans woman be a woman? It doesn't make any sense. It's just not logical. See, no compassion or empathy. Science teaches us gender's a spectrum. There's transgender animals, but yet, nope, I put my foot down. There's only 2 sexes, 2 genders, and there's no difference between sex and gender. Oh, okay. And if they make believe that's true and call that a fact, then they can call the scientists a conspiracy and pay it off. they, then they now have the higher ground, and they get to decide all truth and everything. See? And it's like, no. Um, there's a distinct difference between a natural born woman, also called a cis woman, and a trans woman. There's a reason we're called trans women and trans men. The reason we're called transgender and trans women is because we're not the same thing as a natural born woman. We're not trying to be the same thing. We never said we were the same thing. We're saying gender's a spectrum. Here in Utah, they've passed a law that and it's because they're preparing for Project 2025, which is it's the toxic person's heyday that they're dreaming to have if Trump wins the elections, or even if just any Republican, I think. But especially if Trump wins the election, it's how they're gonna try to say there's only two genders. Gender and sex is the same thing. It's a natural thing. There's no such thing as transgender animals. And any scientist that says gender is a spectrum will be thrown in prison. And they're trying to eradicate. Eradication is the way of the toxic person, and to erase things and manipulate things so that everything fits their version of the truth and everything. And yeah, I admit, if there were only two genders and two sexes, and if those things that they believe were the actual truth, then it would be true. A trans woman wouldn't be a woman, and everything they say would be true according to their logic and their thinking. But they can't say that it's not logical, and they can't even defend their position anyway. Even if they use scripture, they don't know. They don't even understand their own scripture, and they're a bad guy in their own story. If the apocalypse is now and these are the end times, it doesn't matter. They're the bad guy anyway, And you can look at my playlist where I go over the details of that. 666, I think I call it, and on my Bible discussions playlist, you can see. And when I say me, it's not me that's so smart. It's just that I actually listen to the Bible scholars and learn the information, which they don't do, because they can't listen. Number 12, mirroring. It's their style. Their style of charm is what the experts call mirroring. So like you'll say, as part of their love bombing or when anything, as part of their manipulation, you'll say, "I love punk rock music," and me too. They love punk rock music too. But then if it either won't last, one day you'll catch them saying they hate punk rock music, and they'll deny everything. It was just something they were doing at the moment because they were trying to manipulate you in some way. Remember, they don't give anything. And when you're fake in the way that they're fake and incapable in the ways that they're incapable, their things that might look like good things don't last. Hence, the need to call them toxic or bully dozers, because these are really just bullying methods, are they not? And they're bully dozers, because they're not aware and they're destroying everything and knocking everything down in their path. And number 13, the 13th red flag of the toxic person, is a grandiose sense of self. My way or the highway. Only their religion's true. Only their philosophy is true. They are the epitome of morality and decency. And even though when you fact check their information and stuff and Google things and look it up, there's no substance. There's no soul. There's no softness. And when people say that they don't have a soul inside, they mean they don't have any compassion or empathy, really. There's just no softness, or there's nothing inside them like that. They're just very mechanical, and they're slaves to the 13 red flags. And so that's how you can beat a toxic person, is you can be aware. And that's why I'm doing this right now, is because, oh my gosh, my heater just turned on. Okay. So that's how you can beat them, is that they're slaves to these things that we've just gone over. They're slaves to it. They will do those things. Are completely predictable, and that's how you can get out of this. Is by outsmarting them having boundaries and sticking to your boundaries and outsmarting them. Selassie says, and good, and in the end, good will conquer over evil, as we are confident in the victory of good over evil. You know, like good. It doesn't always win in every situation, unfortunately. That's a fairy tale, but so is the Bible, mostly. Um, so is all the stuff they use as tools. Everything about them, there's just no substance, and so that makes them weak in a way that you can beat them. You don't beat them by arguing with them. Never try to change. If you're like, oh, I'm going to teach them to have empathy. I'm going to teach them to be aware that they do these things. No, they can't be. You can't teach them. 'Cause remember, they always have to have the higher ground. They can't. You can't teach them to have compassion, because it'll just turn into a discussion of how you're the one that has no compassion, and they're the ones that's experts with compassion. They might even be that blunt and say, actually, you're the one that has no compassion and empathy, and I'm the one that's an expert at compassion and empathy. Anything you say, nothing's their fault, everything's your fault, and then they'll use gaslighting, or whatever it takes. Love bombing. They'll use any of their manipulation tools they have, and so the only way you can beat them is by being aware. Be aware of yourself and your own self-worth. And be aware. The opposite of a bully dozer is someone that's aware. Ironically, they say woke, which is a term black people use when they're trying to deal with their downpression from the days of slavery. When they realize that some white people get it, some white people are woke. And it doesn't even mean anything. They're like they always say, "What is a woman?" And none of us on our side of the argument can ever define a woman. And we say, "Well, what is woke?" And they can't define anything on that side of it. By definition, fascism is extreme right, and by definition, communism is extreme left. The idea of America is to not be extreme, but to be diverse. It's a unity and diversity, Lady Liberty, melting pot thing. And that's equality, and the toxic person can't have any equality. They always have to have the higher ground. So they'll always break down every system that attempts to make things have equality in it. Everything I've said here is 100%. It's the shit stem. It's the stem of the shit stem of Babylon. It's it's what the Rasta chants that trying to chant down, or these things, no. We need to fight against it by being aware and by having boundaries and that. We need to vote in favor of diversity. I mean, like the immigration is like a major thing with the right, and the border and that, that it's stupid. Are you trying to tell me that they'll give the numbers of all the Mexicans that illegally cross the border and everything, but then according to them, they're all members of the cartel. They're all a bunch of criminals and murderers and members of the cartel. It's like, what the hell? I speak fluent Spanish. I know the Hispanic people. If you're going to round it off, it rounds off that none of them are part of the cartel. Of course, that's hasty. The cartel exists, but if you're going to be hasty and say that all Mexicans are part of the cartel, I'll say, hey, you might as well just say none of the Mexicans are part of the cartel, because that's a lot more accurate. But being hasty is for ignorant people. Everything. There's little duality in black and white in reality. When you do a deep dive and learn things are nuanced. It's more diverse. Reality is more diverse than that. Not one size fits all, cookie cutter, black and white. They're doing the divide and conquer thing, because they're, like Bob says, war in the north, war down south, war in the east, war in the west. Everywhere is war. That's what you got to do. If you're a toxic person, you've always got to have the higher ground, and you don't care, then eradication. And did you know, like the fascist, it's the motto of the fascist is, like did you ever wonder what the motto of the Nazis were? They were saying, make Germany great again. It wasn't MAGA, it wasn't make America great again. It was MG, whatever. It was make Germany great again. It was what their slogan was. And then, like, they're just recycling all the same ideas the Nazis used, saying that the bad guys are grooming children. That was just part of the backbone. That was part of the fundamentalist Nazi propaganda, was that everybody you hate's either a fag, or a, or a groomer, or needs to be eradicated, and where, the joke's on them. If not, the Nazis would have won, then Hitler would have just broken down the people that survived into groups, and decide which ones that's left needs to die, and it would just never end until he was the only one that was alive walking around, and they just they always, these things are consistent and they're 100% relevant. So we need to be aware of that for as individuals, which is even more important. Climate change is real. What do you mean it's a conspiracy? Why does that even matter? Why does it even matter if it's a conspiracy? You don't know that it should be of value to take care of the earth? You need global warming to be proved to be factual, and I believe it is factual because the experts are significantly smarter and more aware than me. Like, who am I to say they're lying? What the hell? How grandiose would you have to be to think you're smarter than all the experts? That's so stupid, and you're smart. They're more grandiose and smarter than all the Bible scholars when it comes to the Bible. They're smarter than all the scientists that say gender's a spectrum, and just why? Like, why? What does it accomplish? Like, what the hell? What does it accomplish? This is what this I'm hesitant to call it a podcast. It's really just an episode. That's what this episode is about. That's why. Because they're toxic. There's a narcissist epidemic going on. There's too many toxic people, and when someone's not toxic, we encourage the others to be toxic. We say, when they meet people, it's not, hey, hi, where are you from? What do you like to do? What's your favorite kind of music? It's, what do you do for a living? Are you going to college? Then they congratulate you and the conversation's over if you have. If you haven't, they're like, oh, well, there are programs to get you in college. Who gives a shit? We just barely met. Why does it matter if I'm going to college? Because to them, everything needs to be a moment to capitalize on everything, and that's what makes the world go round, is money and capitalizing. And a real person of excellence is always trying to gather money and find ways, and we encourage each other, hey, that's really great that you do so much with your time and you're always building things and doing things, and I think that's just great. It is great when toxic people are always in competition. Comparison is the death of all joy. They're trying to bulldoze all joy through war and comparison and competition. Everything's a competition to a toxic person. So anyway, I think that's the wrap on this. Of course, as always, fact check the things I've said. Any of the red flags, or really any of the things, fact check it. See if that is really what the experts say. And thanks for your time. Have a good day.